The sky above the planet Zithera was burning. Crimson fire and black smoke curled into the clouds, casting shadows across the jagged remains of a city that had once thrived. Buildings that had scraped the skies now lay shattered, their glass and metal twisted into sharp, jagged shapes. The war had been long, bitter, and brutal. Human forces had come to liberate Zithera from the control of the alien warlord, Draxus. But victory had come at a terrible cost. Amid the chaos, Captain Ethan Shaw ran through the streets, his pulse racing. He carried a plasma rifle in one hand, and with the other, he guided his small squad of soldiers through the ruins. The aliens were everywhere, clawed, towering figures with glowing eyes, moving with a speed and coordination that only came from generations of warfare. But Ethan was faster, sharper, more unpredictable. "Ethan, over here!" shouted Lieutenant Mara, pointing toward a narrow alley where several aliens were trying to flank them. Ethan didn't hesitate. He sprinted, ducking under debris and leaping over broken beams. With precise aim, he fired, sending a plasma bolt that struck the alien leader, throwing it off balance. His squad followed, moving as one, human instincts guiding them through the chaos. It was not just their training that made them strong, it was their creativity, their ability to think outside the patterns that aliens relied on. One human could outsmart 10 aliens if given the chance. As they pushed forward, a sudden explosion rocked the street. Dust and flames filled the air. Ethan shielded his face, coughing, but something caught his attention: movement at the edge of the smoke. He squinted and saw a lone figure stumbling backward, struggling to escape the destruction. It was Lyra, the alien commander. She was young, elegant even in the chaos, her armor cracked and scorched. But what drew Ethan's attention most was not her rank. It was the fact that she was about to be crushed by falling debris. Without thinking, Ethan dashed toward her. He threw himself across the last few meters, catching her under her arms just as a metal beam crashed to the ground where she had stood. Dust and sparks rained around them. Ethan rolled to safety, Lyra in his arms. For a moment neither spoke. The world seemed to pause, the battle raging around them. She looked at him, her glowing eyes wide, a mixture of surprise and something else, something he could not read. "Are you human?" she finally said, her voice soft, almost a whisper. "I am," Ethan replied, steadying his breathing. "And you survived, thanks to me." Her gaze lingered on him for a moment longer. Then, in a tone that was almost playful, she asked, "Are you single human?" Ethan blinked. The question was so unexpected, so absurd in the middle of a battlefield that he could only shake his head in disbelief. But there was no time to respond properly. The sound of alien reinforcements approached, their heavy footsteps vibrating the ground. Ethan helped Lyra to her feet. "We need to move. Now." Together they sprinted through the ruined streets, dodging falling debris and plasma fire. Lyra's agility surprised him. She moved with a grace that humans could not match. But Ethan's instincts kept them ahead of danger. Every turn, every narrow escape, he relied not only on skill, but on human unpredictability, improvising paths and tricks the aliens could not anticipate. Finally, they reached a temporary human barricade. Soldiers poured over the walls, firing at the advancing aliens. Ethan handed Lyra to a waiting medic, who immediately began checking her for injuries. "You saved her?" Lieutenant Mara asked, her voice filled with disbelief. Ethan shrugged, trying to look casual. "She was about to get squashed. Didn't see the point in letting that happen." Mara shook her head. "She's Draxus's daughter. She'll try to kill us if she gets the chance." Ethan didn't answer. He didn't know yet. All he knew was that saving a life, even an enemy's, felt right. And in that moment, the world seemed to shrink down to one simple truth. Humans were capable of more than just war. They were capable of mercy. The battle raged on around them. Explosions rocked the city and alien cries mixed with human shouts. But the command post, the final stronghold of the alien army, was crumbling. Ethan knew it was now or never. He turned to his squad. "Listen up. We move in, take out the core, and end this war today." Follow my lead." His squad nodded. There was fear in their eyes, yes, but also trust. Humans had a way of inspiring loyalty, even when the odds were impossible. They moved as one, slipping through the chaos, Ethan leading the way. Inside the command post, alarms blared. Aliens rushed to defend their center, but Ethan's squad was ready. They ducked behind walls, fired, and advanced steadily. Each human move seemed to confuse the aliens. They were used to predictable patterns, not the improvisation and risk-taking that humans thrived on. Finally, they reached the central chamber. The core of the alien command system pulsed with bright energy, controlling communications, weapons, and defenses across the planet. Destroy it, and the alien army would collapse. Ethan took a deep breath. He activated his charge and hurled it at the core. The explosion was brilliant, shaking the entire facility. Lights flickered, alarms screamed, and then silence. The alien forces outside faltered. Confused, disoriented, they began to retreat. For the first time in years, the humans held the upper hand. Ethan stepped outside, surveying the battlefield. The air was thick with smoke and ash, but there was a strange beauty in the chaos, the bravery, the courage, the lives risked and saved. And then he saw her, Lyra, standing tall despite her injuries, watching him from the edge of the battlefield. Their eyes met, and for a moment, there was no war, no destruction, only a quiet acknowledgement of something profound. "Are you still single human?" she called again, this time with a small, almost shy smile. Ethan laughed, shaking his head. "Not the right time to ask that, Commander." Her laugh, a melodic sound that seemed almost impossible amidst destruction, echoed in the air. And somehow, despite everything, it made Ethan feel alive. The war was over, at least for now. And in that moment, something new was beginning. Humans had proven their strength, their ingenuity, and their courage. But more than that, they had shown that even in the darkest moments, mercy, compassion, and connection could survive. Ethan knew the world had changed, not just because the war had ended, but because of the spark of understanding between human and alien, a spark that could grow into something extraordinary. He turned to his squad. "Pack up. We've earned a moment to breathe. But stay sharp. This isn't over yet. Not completely." As he spoke, Lyra approached him, her injuries slowing her, but her gaze steady. "Human," she said, almost seriously this time. "Maybe we should talk after the war ends." Ethan smiled, seeing hope in her eyes. "I think that's a good idea." The fire of the battlefield burned behind them, but ahead, there was something brighter. Something that neither human nor alien had expected, and perhaps, just perhaps, it was the beginning of a new future. One where humans were not just fighters but creators of peace even among the stars. The war had ended, but the air was still tense. Smoke and ash lingered over Zithra's broken cities, and the cries of the wounded echoed in empty streets. Captain Ethan Shaw stood aboard a neutral space station, hovering in orbit above the planet. The station was a massive structure of steel and glass, a symbol of temporary peace. Humans and aliens shared the space for negotiations, trying to draw the line between victory and diplomacy. Ethan had never liked diplomacy. He thrived in action, in movement, in thinking fast on his feet. But today he would have to trust his mind, not just his reflexes. Beside him, Lieutenant Mara cleaned her rifle and muttered complaints under her breath about space suits that never fit right. "Relax, Mara," Ethan said with a grin. "We survived a planet exploding around us. I think we can survive some fancy suits." She rolled her eyes but didn't argue. She knew he was right. Humans could survive anything. At the other end of the chamber, Lyra moved with careful grace. She was the alien commander whom Ethan had saved in the final battle, now a guest of the human delegation. Her once perfect armor was repaired, replaced with a mix of alien and human materials. She walked with elegance, her glowing eyes scanning the room, observing humans and their technology with curiosity. For Lyra, the ceasefire was strange. Her world had trained her to see humans as enemies, primitive, dangerous, unpredictable. And yet, She had survived because of one human, Ethan. That simple act of mercy had shaken everything she believed about them. The negotiations began with formal speeches. Human and alien leaders stood behind tall podiums discussing territorial claims, resource sharing, and the rebuilding of cities destroyed in the war. Ethan stayed close to Lyra, not because he was her protector. Officially he wasn't, but because he could sense the tension in her. "Why are they trusting us?" Lyra asked quietly, her voice smooth, almost melodic. Ethan shrugged. "Because humans know what we can do, and because sometimes mercy is more powerful than weapons." She tilted her head, studying him. "Your people are unusual. Brave, yes, but strange. You act without fear even when the outcome seems impossible." "That's human instinct," Ethan said with a small smile. "We improvise. We don't always follow rules. Sometimes it works, sometimes it gets us into trouble." Lyra let out a soft laugh. "I did not expect this. I thought humans were only predictable warriors, but you saved my life. And now, you stand here with me, without threat. It is unfamiliar." Ethan shrugged again, trying not to let his heart beat too fast. "Maybe humans are just more than you expect." As the speeches continued, a sudden alert blared through the station. A rogue faction of alien extremists had attempted an attack on a supply dock. Security alarms rang, and soldiers rushed toward the scene. Ethan and Lyra exchanged a glance. Without speaking, they moved together toward the danger. For Lyra, it was instinct to fight. She had been trained for this. But for Ethan, it was instinct to protect, not just himself but others as well. When they arrived, they saw the attackers attempting to sabotage the human and alien supplies. Lyra's eyes widened at Ethan's quick thinking. He grabbed a control panel and rerouted security drones, sending them to intercept the attackers. Meanwhile, Lyra used her combat skills to disarm two aliens attempting to plant explosives. "You humans are clever," she said, impressed as they finally secured the area. Ethan grinned. "And you aliens are strong. Together we make a good team." For the first time since the war ended, Lyra felt something shift. Humans were not just fighters. They were thinkers, problem solvers, and surprisingly adaptable. She began to see Ethan as more than just a soldier. Over the next days, Ethan and Lyra were forced to spend time together. She stayed near the human delegation, officially under protection, but unofficially she spent hours in the command center, learning about human technology, culture, and ways of thinking. Ethan guided her, explaining their systems, answering her questions, and occasionally teasing her when she struggled to understand human humor. "You call this a cup?" she said, staring at a coffee mug. "It is not for battle, not for survival. It is..." "What purpose?" Ethan laughed. "It holds coffee. You drink it to stay awake." Humans like to invent strange things that sometimes make life easier, or just more interesting. Lyra tilted her head. "Interesting. Humans are creative. You do not simply fight. You solve. You adapt." Ethan shrugged modestly. "We try. Usually it works." There were moments of tension too. Lyra was still Draxus's daughter, and some alien leaders were unhappy with her being near a human. Rumors whispered in corridors, warning her to be cautious to avoid attachment. But Lyra found herself drawn to Ethan, not just for his skill in battle, but for his honesty, bravery, and unpredictability. One evening, after another day of negotiations and minor crises, Lyra approached Ethan as he was reviewing the station's security systems. "You are still single, human?" she asked, repeating the question she had first posed on the battlefield. Ethan blinked. "You keep asking that. I'm not sure how to answer in a place like this," she smiled softly. "I am curious, and perhaps it is acceptable to be curious when there is peace." Ethan laughed, shaking his head. "I guess curiosity is a good start. But peace doesn't happen with just curiosity. It happens with action. And with teamwork." Lyra's smile widened. "Then we shall see if humans can act as well as they think." Their bond grew slowly but steadily. Each small challenge, malfunctioning drones, supply issues, even misunderstandings between human and alien delegates, became an opportunity for cooperation. Ethan's human creativity and adaptability often solved problems that alien logic alone could not. Lyra began to respect him, seeing humans as capable, intelligent, and even honorable. Yet the fragile peace reminded them constantly of the dangers around them. Both humans and aliens knew that the war had not truly ended everywhere. Rogue factions on both sides could strike at any moment. The station itself was a symbol, not of safety but of temporary truce. Ethan and Lyra spent hours in discussion, debating strategies, technology, and even culture. They found laughter in small moments, humor, bridging gaps between species. Lyra admitted she liked the way humans laughed even when things were difficult. Ethan found himself fascinated by her perspective, seeing the war through eyes he had never imagined. Humans fight for survival, Lyra said one evening, staring out at the planet below. But you also fight for ideas, for possibilities. It is strange, but admirable. Ethan nodded. That's us. We survive, yes, but we hope too. That's what makes humans human. She turned to him, her glowing eyes softening. And perhaps that is why I am drawn to you. Not only because you saved me, but because you are human. Ethan felt a strange warmth. He wanted to say more, to speak words that might bridge the gap between them, but the moment passed as a comm relay blared urgent news. Another rogue faction had attempted a small attack on a nearby station. Duty called once more. Come on, he said with a grin. Let's see if humans and aliens together can stop them. Side by side, they moved toward the new threat. Each step reinforced something neither had expected: trust, cooperation, and a growing connection that could survive even in a universe scarred by war. As they prepared to face the danger, Lyra looked at him once more. Human, perhaps after this we can speak again. About more personal things. Ethan smiled. I think I'd like that. And for the first time since the war began, he felt a quiet hope. Not just that peace could be achieved, but that human courage, creativity, and compassion could make something better, something lasting between species. The ceasefire was fragile, the future uncertain. But in that moment, standing beside an alien he had once called an enemy, Ethan knew one thing for sure. Humans had more to give than just strength. They had understanding, empathy, and the power to build a new world. And perhaps, just perhaps, a new friendship or something more was beginning to grow in the heart of that fragile peace. The neutral space station hung like a silver jewel above Zythera, orbiting silently over the scarred planet below. The war was over, yet tension lingered like a shadow. Captain Ethan Shaw moved through the corridors, his eyes scanning every panel, every corner. He was no longer just a soldier. He was now part of a delicate experiment in diplomacy, human ingenuity versus alien tradition, trust versus suspicion. Beside him, Lyra followed with measured steps. She had recovered from her injuries, and her gaze was sharp, intelligent, and full of curiosity. Every detail fascinated her, from the human consoles to the tiny routines of human life aboard the station. Even the way humans moved, how they laughed and argued, was a mystery to her. Ethan, she asked, pausing at the entrance to the control deck, why do humans work in such strange ways? You seem disorganized. Yet everything functions, Ethan smiled. It's not disorganized. It just looks that way to aliens. Humans improvise. We find solutions when rules don't help. Sometimes it's messy, but it works. Lyra tilted her head. Improvisation, I see. Aliens value precision, order. Humans that seem unpredictable. Perhaps that is why you survive. Maybe, Ethan replied. Humans survive because we adapt. And because we care. Not just about survival, but about each other. For the next few days, Ethan and Lyra were forced into close proximity. The human delegation insisted on it to ensure her safety. But unofficially, the two of them worked together on practical problems. Repairing security systems, rerouting power to failing sections of the station, and even calibrating alien devices that humans had never seen before. One afternoon, a sudden alert blared through the station. A security drone had malfunctioned, firing randomly at nearby personnel. Ethan grabbed a control panel while Lyra leapt into action, deflecting energy blasts with precise, fluid movements. "You humans really are clever," she said. As the drone finally powered down, Ethan grinned. "And you aliens are strong. Together we make a pretty good team." The first moments of genuine collaboration broke down many barriers. Lyra began to see that humans were not just primitive creatures of brute strength. They were thinkers, problem solvers, and risk-takers. Humans acted unpredictably, yes, but with purpose. Their creativity fascinated her. "Tell me," she asked later as they sat in the quiet of the control deck, "why did you save me on the battlefield?" "I am your enemy." Ethan leaned back thoughtful. "Because it was the right thing to do. Mercy. Sometimes it matters more than victory. You were about to die and I could stop it. So I did." Lyra's eyes softened. "That is foreign. In my world, enemies are eliminated. Mercy is weakness." "Not in ours," Ethan said quietly. "Mercy can be a strength. It can change how people see each other. Even enemies can become allies." Her gaze lingered on him, thoughtful and intense. "Then perhaps humans are stronger than we thought, not just in battle but in spirit." As the days passed, Lyra grew more comfortable in the human environment. She asked endless questions about human habits, technology, humor, and culture. Ethan patiently answered, teaching her to use tools, repair circuits, and even enjoy the small quirks of human life. One evening, Lyra found herself holding a human coffee mug, staring at it curiously. "This holds a liquid called coffee?" she asked. "It is bitter. Yet humans drink it daily," Ethan laughed. "It helps us stay awake. Sometimes it makes us feel alert, ready for anything." She studied him, then took a small sip, grimacing. "Curious. Humans endure unpleasant things willingly. And yet, you call this normal?" Ethan shrugged. "It's human nature. We do strange things because we can, and sometimes it works in ways we don't expect. The conversations, the small collaborations, the shared problem-solving, it all began to form a bond between them." Lyra found herself laughing at Ethan's jokes, though she often pretended not to understand humor at first. She began to respect his courage, creativity, and kindness. Ethan, for his part, was fascinated by her intelligence, discipline, and perspective. She thought in ways humans had never considered, her decisions shaped by centuries of tradition, yet she was willing to learn, to adapt, and to see humans as equals. One quiet night, as they walked along the observation deck, gazing at the distant stars, Lyra spoke again. "Human, you are still single?" she asked, her voice calm but tinged with curiosity. Ethan chuckled. "You keep asking that. Maybe I should just say yes to keep you entertained." Her lips curved into a small smile. "Perhaps, but I am serious. I wish to know more about humans and perhaps more about you." Ethan felt his chest tighten slightly. There was a strange comfort in her curiosity, a warmth that had nothing to do with battle or survival. "Well," he said, "humans are complicated. But yes, I'm single. Why do you ask?" Lyra's eyes flickered with something new, a spark of interest, of trust, and perhaps something deeper. "Curiosity," she said simply, "and maybe because you saved me." It was a moment of connection, unspoken yet powerful. For the first time since the war began, Ethan realized that humans could inspire trust, admiration, even friendship with those they had once called enemies. The next day, the station's alarms blared again. This time, a small shuttle carrying diplomatic supplies had gone off course, drifting dangerously close to the planet's atmosphere. Ethan and Lyra were sent to intercept it. Working together, they managed to guide the shuttle to safety, using a combination of human improvisation and alien precision. Lyra's admiration grew, not just for his skill, but for the way humans thought under pressure. "You humans are remarkable," she said afterward. "Not merely in battle, but in thought, in action, in spirit." Ethan smiled. "Thanks. And you're not so bad yourself. You move, think, and react in ways we'd never expect. It's impressive." Their cooperation became routine. Every problem, every unexpected situation was solved together. Slowly, Lyra began to trust humans, and Ethan in particular, in ways she had never trusted anyone from another species. One afternoon, while repairing a damaged communication relay, Lyra glanced at Ethan. "Human, perhaps after this war, when peace is certain, You and I could speak more. About friendship. About your world. Ethan looked at her, feeling a strange mixture of hope and caution. I'd like that, he said softly. I think humans and aliens could learn a lot from each other if we're willing. She nodded, her expression serious. Yes, perhaps it is time to see not only enemies but possibilities. The station continued its operations around them, a fragile symbol of cooperation. Humans and aliens worked side by side, learning to trust one another in ways neither species had imagined possible. And amidst all the machinery, alarms, and negotiations, a bond was forming, delicate, powerful, and full of potential. By the end of the week, Lyra had learned to operate human devices with surprising skill, and Ethan had gained insight into alien logic and perspective. Together, they had solved problems that might have seemed impossible alone. And with each challenge, each shared laugh, and each moment of understanding, the fragile peace of the station grew stronger. As they stood together on the observation deck one final evening, watching the sun rise over the planet's shattered surface, Lyra spoke softly. Human, perhaps there is more to life than victory. Perhaps there is understanding. And perhaps something more. Ethan smiled, feeling the truth of her words. Yes, that something more is worth protecting, worth fighting for in a different way. The stars stretched endlessly above them, silent witnesses to a new beginning. And in that quiet moment, Ethan understood something fundamental. Humans were not only survivors, they were creators of hope, builders of peace, and bridges between worlds. And Lyra was beginning to see it too. The orbiting station felt different now. The war was over, yet the air was tense. Humans and aliens worked together, but old habits and old loyalties were hard to forget. Captain Ethan Shaw walked beside Lyra through the busy corridors, noticing the way her eyes darted at every shadow. She moved with confidence, but there was unease in her steps. The Alien Council will not like this, Lyra said quietly, her glowing eyes focused on the station's communications hub. They see my presence with humans as dangerous. They will question my loyalty. Ethan nodded. I know, but they also see what humans can do. And right now, cooperation is the only way forward. Her gaze lingered on him. You trust humans even when others doubt. That is unusual. Not unusual, Ethan replied. It's necessary. Sometimes trust is stronger than fear, and humans don't give up easily. Lyra considered this silently. She had been raised to obey tradition, to follow the orders of her father, the warlord Draxus, without question. But after witnessing Ethan's courage, his ingenuity, and his mercy, she began to doubt everything she had been taught. Perhaps not all humans were enemies. Perhaps they were something more. The station's alarms blared suddenly, cutting through the quiet. A small fleet of rogue alien ships had breached the outer perimeter, intent on reigniting conflict. Ethan's squad sprang into action and Lyra moved beside him, instinctively ready for combat. This is our chance to prove peace can work, Ethan said, gripping his rifle. Let's show them humans aren't just fighters, we're problem solvers. Lyra's eyes sparkled with determination. And we will show them aliens can adapt. They raced to the station's command center, coordinating with both human and alien personnel. Ethan's quick thinking rerouted power to defensive shields, while Lyra used her knowledge of alien tactics to anticipate the attackers' moves. Together, they formed a plan that combined human improvisation with alien precision. The first wave of rogue ships approached. Ethan's squad fired plasma cannons while Lyra guided defensive drones, creating a barrier that forced the attackers to retreat. But the rogue faction was relentless. They knew the station's defenses intimately, having trained under Draxus's command. We need a new approach, Ethan shouted. I'll draw them into a trap, you guide the drones. Lyra hesitated. It is risky, too much risk. Ethan smiled, a flash of his usual confidence. I know, but humans survive risk all the time. Trust me. Together they executed the plan. Ethan piloted a small fighter weaving through enemy fire, while Lyra coordinated the drones to block escape routes. One by one, the rogue ships were neutralized or forced to retreat. When the battle ended, the station's alarms quieted. Ethan and Lyra stood side by side, breathing heavily. We did it, Ethan said. Yes, Lyra replied, her voice calm but with a hint of awe. Humans are clever and brave. I'm beginning to understand. Their victory, however, came with consequences. Word of Lyra's cooperation with humans reached the alien council. Messages arrived, questioning her loyalty and hinting at punishment if she continued to align with humans. She read them silently, her expression unreadable. "Ethan," she said later in a quiet corner of the station, "my advisors do not approve of my actions. They say I am dishonoring my family. Yet I cannot deny what I have learned. Humans are remarkable, and you have shown me trust and courage I did not expect." Ethan placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You're doing the right thing, Lyra. Change is never easy, but sometimes it's necessary." She looked at him, a mixture of admiration and uncertainty. "And yet, loyalty to my people is still expected. I am torn between what I have been taught and what I have seen. I do not know if I can reconcile the two." "Humans face that too," Ethan said softly. "We have to choose between what is easy and what is right. Sometimes it's scary, but it's worth it." Lyra nodded, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly. "Perhaps humans have strength beyond battle, strength in spirit that is inspiring." The days that followed were tense. Lyra attended council meetings under human escort, and Ethan stayed close, ready to intervene if necessary. The alien delegate scrutinized her every word, every movement, testing her loyalty. But Lyra held her ground, supported by the quiet confidence of a human who had faced impossible odds and survived. One afternoon, as the council debated reconstruction plans, a message arrived from Draxus himself. The words were formal, yet carried a weight of warning. "Remember your duty. Do not let human influence cloud your judgment. Loyalty is everything." Lyra's eyes narrowed, but she did not waver. She looked at Ethan, who gave her a small nod. Together they responded, presenting plans that combined human ingenuity with alien structure, showing that cooperation was not betrayal, it was progress. After the meeting, Lyra spoke quietly to Ethan. "They will not accept change easily, but your presence, your guidance has made me see possibilities I did not consider. Humans can be trusted." Ethan smiled. "That's what I hoped you'd see. Humans aren't perfect, but we try, and sometimes trying is enough." Even as tension simmered, moments of lightness appeared. Lyra began laughing more freely at human humor, teasing Ethan about his unconventional methods. And he, in turn, found himself fascinated by her intelligence, discipline, and willingness to learn. One evening, while they worked on repairing a damaged shuttle, Lyra glanced at him. "Human, I still wish to know more about you. Not as a soldier, not as an ally, but as a person." Ethan paused, considering her words. "I'd like that," he said softly. "Humans have stories to tell, and I think you'll find them interesting." She tilted her head, a small smile forming. "Then perhaps we shall learn from each other." Beyond war, beyond duty, their bond deepened as they faced new challenges together. Every crisis, every problem, every moment of tension became a chance to strengthen trust. The station, once a symbol of fragile peace, now felt like a place of opportunity, growth, and understanding. But outside the station, the world remained unpredictable. Rogue factions, remnants of the old war, still threatened peace. Draxus's influence lingered, and the alien council continued to watch Lyra closely. Every action she took could have consequences, yet she moved forward with confidence, guided by the example of a human who had risked everything to save her life. One night, as they observed Zithra from the station's observation deck, Lyra spoke softly. "Ethan, perhaps there is more to leadership than obedience. Perhaps there is courage in choosing what is right even when it is difficult." Ethan nodded. "That's what humans do. We survive by adapting, by learning, and by standing for what we believe is right. And sometimes we make allies out of enemies." Lyra's glowing eyes met his. "And sometimes humans inspire loyalty not through fear but through trust." "That is powerful," Ethan smiled. "It is, and it's what makes humans, well, human." The stars stretched endlessly beyond the observation deck, silent witnesses to the delicate balance between old loyalties and new alliances. In that quiet moment, Ethan realized something fundamental. Humans were not just survivors, they were builders of hope, bridges between worlds and creators of possibilities. And Lyra was beginning to understand it too. For the first time, she felt that the path she chose could be one of courage, trust, and new beginnings, not just duty or fear. And standing beside a human who had risked everything for her, She knew she was not alone. Together they faced a future full of uncertainty, but also full of potential. A future where humans and aliens could cooperate, learn from one another, and perhaps build something stronger than war had ever allowed. As they turned from the observation deck, ready to face the challenges ahead, Kalira whispered almost to herself, "Human, perhaps peace is possible, and perhaps something more." Ethan looked at her and smiled. "I think you're right." And in that smile, the promise of understanding, trust, and a new bond stretched across the stars, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them. The space station floated silently above Zythera, a shimmering symbol of hope and fragile peace. The war had ended. The battles were over, and for the first time in years, humans and aliens were working side by side, not as enemies, but as allies. Captain Ethan Shaw walked along the observation deck, watching the planet below. Its surface was scarred and burned, yet there were signs of life returning. Small forests regrowing, rivers clearing, and settlements beginning to rebuild. The war had taken much, but it had also left a chance for something new. Beside him, Kalira walked with a quiet confidence. She had grown since the first day Ethan had saved her on the battlefield. No longer just a commander of alien forces, she was a bridge between species, a symbol of hope for cooperation. "Human," she said softly, glancing at him. "It seems peace is finally possible." Ethan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Yes, but peace is not something you achieve once, it's something you keep working for. Every day, every choice matters." Kalira's glowing eyes met his, and for a moment the world seemed to shrink to just the two of them. "And yet, we have already shown that cooperation works. Humans and aliens, we can learn from each other. Perhaps even trust each other." Ethan smiled. "That's what I've been saying all along. Humans survive, yes, but we also build. We create connections even in the hardest times." The station's comm system beeped urgently. Leaders from both human and alien delegations were calling for the final peace ceremony. It was time to make their alliance official, to show the galaxy that Zythera could rise from its ashes. Ethan and Kalira walked together to the ceremonial hall. The room was vast, filled with representatives from both species. Humans in their uniforms and aliens in their elegant ceremonial armor stood side by side. Flags representing planets, systems, and factions hung along the walls, a visual reminder of the fragile cooperation now being formalized. As the ceremony began, Kalira's advisors whispered warnings. She should not trust humans so openly, one said. "The council will not approve." Kalira ignored them. She had seen the truth. Humans were not merely enemies or conquerors, they were capable of courage, honor, and understanding. And Ethan had shown her this time and again through action and choice. The ceremony progressed with speeches, handshakes, and formal statements of cooperation. Ethan and Kalira stood at the center, representatives of two species learning to trust one another. And then, as the ceremony reached its climax, Kalira turned to Ethan, her glowing eyes meeting his. "Human," she said, her voice clear and sincere. "Are you single?" The question, simple as it seemed, hung in the air. The room was silent for a moment. Delegates from both species looked on, curious. But Ethan did not hesitate. "I am," he said, smiling. "And I think that curiosity is not a bad thing." A small murmur ran through the room, but Kalira laughed softly, a melodic sound that seemed to ease the tension. "Then perhaps we can explore what that means. Beyond diplomacy, beyond duty." Ethan nodded. "I'd like that. Humans believe in possibilities, and sometimes the best possibilities are the ones we choose together." The ceremony concluded with applause, handshakes, and words of promise. Humans and aliens alike celebrated the beginning of a new era, one where cooperation, respect, and understanding replaced fear and conflict. Later, as the crowd dispersed, Kalira and Ethan walked along the observation deck again. The stars stretched endlessly before them, silent witnesses to the change that had occurred. "You've taught me much," Kalira said softly. "Not just about humans, but about trust, courage, and hope. I did not think it possible." Ethan shrugged modestly. "Humans have always survived by learning, adapting, and caring. You just had to see it for yourself." She smiled, a mixture of admiration and warmth. "And now I do, perhaps. Our peoples can learn as well. If humans and aliens can trust each other, maybe the galaxy can too." Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. It won't be easy. There will always be challenges. But together we can face them. And I think we're off to a good start. For the first time in years, Lyra felt peace, not just in the galaxy, but in her heart. The bond she had formed with Ethan was more than strategy or survival. It was trust, respect, and the beginning of something personal, something meaningful. They spent the next days helping with reconstruction, guiding humans and aliens to work together. Ethan showed alien engineers how human improvisation could solve difficult problems, while Lyra taught humans about alien technology that could improve efficiency. Together they became a living example of cooperation, a bridge between worlds. One afternoon, while overseeing a repair of a vital energy conduit, Lyra turned to Ethan. "Human, I wish to learn more. About your world, your people, and perhaps about you." Ethan smiled. "I'd like that. Humans have stories, traditions, and habits that can seem strange, but there's always something to learn, and I think you'll find them interesting." Their work continued side by side. Every challenge they faced, technical, logistical, or political, strengthened their bond. Lyra's admiration for humans deepened, and Ethan's respect for her intelligence and courage grew. They had survived war together, solved crises together, and now in peace, they could explore something entirely new. One evening, as they watched Zithera's twin moons rise over the planet's recovering surface, Lyra spoke softly. "Human, perhaps there is more to life than battle. Perhaps there is understanding, trust, and even friendship. And maybe something more." Ethan turned to her, smiling. "I think you're right. And that something more is worth protecting, not with weapons, but with respect, courage, and care." She nodded, her eyes glowing softly. "Then perhaps we can show our peoples what is possible, that humans and aliens can live, work, and grow together, and maybe that trust can lead to something personal as well." Ethan's heart lifted. "I'd like that too." For the first time since the war began, the stars felt brighter. The galaxy no longer seemed so hostile. Humans had proven their ingenuity, courage, and compassion. Aliens had shown adaptability, wisdom, and the potential for change. And between them, between Ethan and Lyra, there was trust, respect, and a spark of something hopeful. The days turned into weeks. Humans and aliens rebuilt settlements, shared technology, and worked to ensure the mistakes of war were never repeated. And through it all, Ethan and Lyra continued to learn from each other, teaching not just skills and strategy, but patience, understanding, and the importance of connection. Finally, as the station prepared to return to a quieter routine, Lyra turned to Ethan one last time on the observation deck. "Human, I have learned much from you," she said. "Courage, mercy, creativity, and trust. Perhaps our peoples will remember this moment, and perhaps we will have more moments like it together." Ethan smiled, feeling the weight and promise of her words. "We will. Humans always try, and sometimes trying is enough to change the world." She smiled, a soft, radiant glow in her eyes. "Then, let us try. Together." And as they watched the sun rise over Zithera, painting the sky with gold and crimson, a new future stretched before them. A future of peace, understanding, and cooperation. A future where humans and aliens could not only survive, but thrive. And in the midst of this new beginning, there was a simple, hopeful truth. Trust, courage, and friendship could overcome fear and hatred, and even the smallest spark of connection could light the way to a brighter galaxy. Ethan turned to Lyra, his eyes reflecting the rising sun. "So, about that question you keep asking." Lyra laughed softly, a sound that seemed to echo across the stars. "Yes," Ethan smiled warmly. "I think we have time to explore that, and everything else that comes next. Together." She nodded, her smile radiant. "Together." Above Zithera, the station glowed like a beacon. Below, the planet healed, and among the stars, a human and an alien walked side by side, ready to face whatever the universe might hold. Not as enemies, but as allies, friends, and perhaps something more. The war was over. Peace had begun, and the moment that began with a question, "Are you single, human?" had grown into a promise of understanding, trust, and hope for the future.